Family abuse can leave profound and lasting scars, especially when it is woven into sibling relationships. The emotional and psychological ramifications can be far-reaching, casting long shadows from childhood into adult life. This personal story serves as a deep reflection of the toll that growing up with abusive siblings can exact. The intricate web of familial bonds complicates abuse, making it difficult for victims to seek help or recognize the toxicity that surrounds them. From childhood through adulthood, toxic relationships reshape your self-esteem, your relationships, and mental well-being. The biblical tale of Cain and Abel serves as a haunting allegory for sibling rivalry, a story of jealousy and betrayal that culminates in tragedy. This ancient narrative resonates with unsettling familiarity for those who have experienced a sibling's cruelty. My own story begins with a similar sense of foreboding, starting with an unsettling phone call from my brother. His request seemed innocent at first, adding his son's name to a stock account. However, my refusal to alter the arrangement ignited an unexpected and volatile reaction, a torrent of anger that signaled the beginning of a dark chapter. This initial confrontation was merely the prelude to events that would shatter our familial ties. The seemingly minor disagreement quickly spiraled into a much larger conflict, exposing deep-seated resentment and jealousy that had been festering for years. It was a stark reminder that the people we're supposed to trust most, our own flesh and blood, can become the source of our deepest pain. The emotional weight of this realization is immense, forcing one to question love, loyalty, and family. The journey through this landscape of betrayal is fraught with confusion, grief, and loss. Children who grow up with intense sibling abuse grapple with overwhelming feelings of inadequacy, pervasive shame, and deep confusion. The constant exposure to jealousy and narcissistic behavior distorts their understanding of love and acceptance, leading to a crippling sense of distrust. As these individuals navigate into adulthood, the challenges of healing can feel truly daunting. They struggle with establishing boundaries, forming authentic connections, or recognizing their own worth undermined by years of emotional torment. The journey toward recovery from sibling abuse is often a long and arduous path, one that involves not only confronting the searing pain of the past, but also learning to navigate the intricate complexities of forgiveness. This forgiveness is a dual process, encompassing both the act of forgiving those who have caused immense harm and learning to forgive oneself for perceived vulnerabilities or for not escaping the situation sooner. The deep scars left by familial abuse can manifest in a multitude of ways, including persistent anxiety that hums just below the surface, bouts of deep depression that can feel all-consuming, and significant difficulties with intimacy and forming close bonds. The road to healing is rarely a straight line. It is often long and winding, requiring immense patience and compassion. This journey cannot and should not be undertaken alone. The support from therapists, the shared understanding found in support groups, or the validation from trusted friends can provide an essential lifeline for those struggling to emerge from the shadow of their past. These external sources of support can offer the perspective, empathy, and tools necessary to begin untangling the complex emotions tied to the abuse. Ultimately, this story aims to shed light on the profound and often overlooked impact of abusive sibling relationships. It emphasizes the critical importance of acknowledging and addressing the deep emotional wounds, not just for resolving past hurts, but for fostering a healthier, more fulfilling life moving forward. The narrative begins in the confusing and vulnerable world of childhood, a time when one should be able to rely on siblings for support, love, and companionship. Instead, for many, it becomes a relentless battle for emotional and sometimes physical survival. This tale highlights the chaos and profound distress introduced by siblings who exhibit narcissistic traits and overwhelming jealousy. How does a young person navigate such a complex emotional landscape, especially when family members who are supposed to be closest allies become a constant source of torment and pain? The experience is disorienting and deeply damaging, leaving a child to fend for themselves in a war they never asked to fight. What often begin as seemingly trivial disagreements, minor disputes over shared toys, a competition for parental attention, or simple sibling squabbles, can quickly escalate into serious and damaging confrontations. My story of a rivalry, one that mirrors the ancient and tragic tale of Cain and Abel, begins not with a dramatic confrontation, but with the quiet, unsettling ring of a telephone. On the other end of the line was my brother, his voice a familiar sound that had, until that moment, always been a source of comfort. He reached out to me with a request that, on the surface, seemed innocent enough. He wanted me to add his son's name to the stock that was solely registered in my name and his, a shared asset from our family's legacy. It was a simple proposition, yet a wave of unease washed over me, a gut feeling that I could not ignore. I hesitated, the silence on the line stretching uncomfortably before I finally found my voice. I told him no, suggesting that we should just leave things as they were, preserving the original arrangement we had always agreed upon. This response triggered a reaction I never could have anticipated from the brother I thought I knew. His demeanor shifted instantly, the calm facade crumbling away to reveal a deep well of anger and frustration. His voice, once calm and measured, became sharp and clipped, his words laced with a bitterness that echoed through the phone line with a chilling intensity. It was a jarring and deeply unsettling transformation, a moment that felt like a crack forming in the very foundation of our relationship. This was not just a disagreement over finances. It felt like something far more significant, a line being drawn in the sand. That single phone call, that one heated exchange, marked the definitive beginning of a troubling series of events that would forever alter the dynamics of our family, sending us down a path of suspicion and betrayal. In the aftermath of our tense conversation, a heavy silence fell between us, but it was a silence filled with unspoken threats and simmering resentment. My brother, however, did not let the matter rest. Instead of seeking resolution or understanding, he took a drastic and calculated step that demonstrated the true depth of his intentions. He chose to involve our sister, reaching out to her not for mediation, but to devise a plan, a sinister plot that centered around my nephew. Their goal was insidious and shockingly clear. They were orchestrating a scheme designed to eliminate me from the equation entirely, to remove me as an obstacle to the assets they coveted. The gravity of this conspiracy became terrifyingly apparent when my sister called me, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and panic. Her words were frantic and urgent as she insisted, almost pleaded, that I needed to put my car securely in the garage immediately. This warning was bizarre and confusing, especially given that I lived in a quiet, safe neighborhood in Wisconsin, where such precautions seemed entirely unnecessary. I found it difficult to comprehend the source of her sudden and intense insistence. Everything in my life seemed perfectly fine, and I couldn't grasp the underlying threat she was so desperately trying to convey. Yet, she pressed on, her worry so palpable it was almost contagious, a chilling premonition of danger that I reluctantly began to consider. Her fear was a dark seed planted in my mind, one that would soon grow into a terrifying realization of the truth. As the weeks turned into months, a dark and oppressive gloom began to settle over my life, a pervasive sense of foreboding that I couldn't shake. It was a feeling that something was deeply wrong, a shadow lurking just at the edge of my perception. My car, which had been brand new and perfectly reliable, started to exhibit strange and unpredictable behaviors. It was as if the vehicle had developed a malevolent mind of its own, stuttering and failing at random moments, its once smooth performance now erratic and dangerous. I immediately sensed that something was fundamentally amiss, that this was no ordinary mechanical failure. The unsettling realization struck me like a bolt of lightning, a horrifying thought that was both terrifying and profoundly painful. My brother had tampered with my car. The thought itself was a deep betrayal, a violation of the sacred trust that should exist between siblings. The bond we once shared, a connection I had cherished and believed to be unbreakable, now seemed like a fragile illusion. Recognizing the very real and immediate danger I was in, I knew I had to act decisively to protect myself. I made the difficult decision to turn in my car, trading it for a new one in the hope of safeguarding myself from whatever malicious intentions were lurking in the shadows. This felt like a necessary step, a way to remove the physical threat, but I knew that a new vehicle alone would not solve the deeper problem. The treachery that had unfolded needed to be brought into the light, exposed for what it was. I understood with chilling clarity that I needed more than just a new car. I needed concrete evidence of the betrayal that had seeped into the heart of my family. I needed proof that could not be denied or dismissed. In a calculated and desperate move, I devised a plan to trick my sister into admitting what my brother had done, to coax the truth from her lips while her guard was down. I set up a conversation, carefully steering it toward the topic of my car troubles, and I recorded her every word. Her confession, when it came, was a chilling testament to the conspiracy against me, a cold and undeniable account of the betrayal that had poisoned our family. Her voice, captured on tape, became the hard evidence of their sinister plot. With this damning recording in hand, I knew I had to take the necessary legal steps to protect myself. I went to the courthouse, my heart heavy with a mixture of fear and resolve, and sought a restraining order against my own brother. The realization that he believed the only way to access the money tied to our shared family assets was through my death filled me with an overwhelming sense of despair and terror. The emotional turmoil of this entire ordeal was excruciating, a constant gnawing pain in my chest. I had always loved my brother deeply and would have done anything to protect him. This experience, however, taught me a harsh and unforgiving lesson about the nature of trust and the darkness that can hide within a family. The initial signs of trouble were subtle, easy to dismiss as the quirks of a new machine. There was a slight hesitation when I turned the key in the ignition, and sometimes a flicker of a dashboard light that would vanish as quickly as it appeared. But honestly, these small anomalies soon grew into more significant and alarming problems. The engine, once a purring and powerful heart, began to sputter and choke, sometimes stalling in the middle of traffic, leaving me stranded and vulnerable. The brakes felt soft and unresponsive one day, then overly sensitive the next. It was, honestly, a terrifying game of Russian roulette every time I got behind the wheel, never knowing what part of the car would fail me next. I took it to multiple mechanics, but none could find a definitive cause for the bizarre and inconsistent issues. This mechanical chaos was more than just an inconvenience. It was a constant source of anxiety that eroded my sense of safety in the world. I became hyper-vigilant, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, my ears tuned to every strange noise the car made. The simple act of driving, once a source of freedom and independence, became a nerve-wracking ordeal. The insidious nature of the tampering meant that the danger was unpredictable. It wasn't a clean break or a clear failure. It was a slow, creeping poison being fed into the veins of my vehicle. This calculated cruelty was what made it so terrifying. It was designed not just to harm me, but to make me feel like I was losing my mind, to make me doubt my own perceptions. The connection between my brother's anger and my car's sudden decline was a thought that I initially pushed away, unable to accept such a monstrous possibility. Brothers were supposed to protect each other, not plot their demise over money. But as the incidents grew more frequent and more dangerous, the denial began to crumble, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. My sister's panicked warning echoed in my mind, no longer sounding like an overreaction but like a desperate attempt to save me. She knew. She was part of it. The realization was a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs and leaving me with a profound sense of isolation. I was being hunted by my own family, and the world suddenly felt like a much darker and more dangerous place. The decision to get rid of the car was an act of self-preservation, but it was also a surrender of sorts. It was an admission that I was no longer safe, that the threat was real and immediate. As I signed the papers for the new vehicle, I felt a fleeting sense of relief, but it was quickly overshadowed by a deep and abiding sadness. This was not just about a car, it was about the death of a relationship, the end of the trust and love I once had for my brother. The new car was a shield, but the wound of his betrayal was deep and would not be so easily replaced. I knew that even with this new layer of protection, the war was far from over. The real battle was just beginning. The emotional fallout from this entire ordeal was excruciating, a constant heavy weight on my soul. To love someone as I had loved my brother, to have built a lifetime of memories and shared experiences with him, only to discover that he could wish me harm for the sake of money, was a pain beyond description. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound could. It poisoned every happy memory, casting a sinister shadow over our shared past. How could the boy who I played with in the yard, the young man I had confided in, have turned into this stranger who saw me not as a brother, but as an obstacle to be removed? The grief for the brother I lost was as profound as the fear for my own life. This experience has taught me a harsh and indelible lesson. You cannot blindly trust everyone, not even those who are bound to you by blood, not even those who are supposed to be your family. The people you hold closest have the greatest power to hurt you, for they know your weaknesses, your fears, and your vulnerabilities. This betrayal runs deep, a poison that contaminates the very idea of family and home. My story serves as a stark and painful reminder of the frightening complexities of familial relationships and the potential for a profound darkness that can lurk just beneath the surface of seemingly normal bonds. It is a testament to the fact that love, when twisted by greed and jealousy, can become intertwined with the gravest of dangers. Vigilance, I learned, is a necessity even among those we hold closest to our hearts. It is a sad truth to accept that one must be on guard against the very people who should be a source of safety and support. The courthouse felt cold and impersonal as I filed the restraining order, each signature on the legal documents feeling like another nail in the coffin of our relationship. There was no victory in this action, only a profound sense of loss and sorrow. I was not just protecting myself from a threat, I was formalizing the end of my family as I knew it. The legal system offered a shield, but it could not mend the shattered pieces of my heart or restore the trust that had been so utterly destroyed. In the end, I was left grappling with a world that felt fundamentally altered. The foundation of my life had been shaken to its core, and I was forced to rebuild on uncertain ground. The love I had for my brother was now a complicated tapestry of grief, anger, and fear. The naive belief that family is an unconditional sanctuary was gone, replaced by the cold, hard reality of his betrayal. While I took the necessary steps to ensure my physical safety, the journey to heal the emotional wounds had only just begun. It was a path I knew I would have to walk largely alone, forever changed by the knowledge of what my own brother was capable of. Then, on the other hand, there was my sister. The betrayal from my brother was a sharp, calculated wound, but the pain inflicted by my sister was a blunter, more brutal force. One hot and oppressively sunny day, I found myself at my mother's house, a place that should have felt like a sanctuary, a haven of safety and comfort. Instead, it had become a battleground, a tense and volatile space littered with the landmines of unresolved issues and painful buried memories. I can't quite pinpoint what specific words or actions triggered the argument that day, but the conflict, as it so often did, circled back to the dark, forbidden memories of my childhood, particularly the deep and unspoken trauma of being molested as a toddler. This was a horrifying experience that my family had collectively worked to keep hidden, shrouded in a thick fog of silence and denial, which only intensified the weight of my suffering. On this particular day, the atmosphere inside the house was thick with an almost tangible tension. The air felt heavy and suffocating, as if it were drenching me in an emotional downpour that I could not escape. I have always been small and frail, a physical characteristic that stands in stark contrast to my sister, who is big and tall. This physical disparity between us was never just a simple matter of stature. It frequently translated into a power dynamic that left me feeling utterly helpless and vulnerable in her presence. When the argument inevitably escalated, her simmering anger finally boiled over, and she unleashed her pent-up fury on me, beating me mercilessly with a rage that seemed to come from a bottomless well of resentment. I was completely unable to defend or protect myself from the onslaught. The most heartbreaking part of this brutal assault was not just the physical pain, but the profound emotional agony of my mother's inaction. She stood by, a silent witness to the violence, doing absolutely nothing to intervene, to stop my sister, or to offer me any form of support or protection. Her silence was a betrayal all its own, a deafening roar of indifference that echoed the deepest fears of my childhood. I cried out in anguish, my small body racked with a pain that was both physical and profoundly emotional, my sobs lost in the suffocating atmosphere of that house. In a moment of sheer desperation and despair, I fled to the bathroom, seeking some small solace in the solitude of the tiny enclosed space. I locked the door behind me, my hands trembling, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I turned on the tub faucet, the sound of the rushing water a temporary shield against the chaos outside the door. I watched the water flow, a steady, indifferent stream, as I contemplated the unbearable weight of my existence, the crushing burden of a life filled with so much pain and so little love. It felt as if every path was blocked, every door to happiness slammed shut in my face. In a moment of absolute desperation, a fleeting attempt to escape the torment that had become my life, I got into the tub and with a shard of broken glass, I slashed my wrist. The pain was sharp, but it was nothing compared to the agony in my soul. The thought of my sister, someone I had always longed to have a close and loving bond with, inflicting such profound pain upon me, was a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound. It was a violation of a fundamental trust, a severing of a tie that should have been a source of strength and comfort. Throughout my entire life, I had yearned for a genuine, close relationship with my siblings. I watched other families, other brothers and sisters who laughed and supported one another, and I felt a hollow ache of longing for that same connection. But as the middle child, I often felt like an afterthought, a mere shadow flitting in the background of my family's complicated dynamics, never fully seen, never truly heard. My presence seemed incidental, my needs and feelings easily overlooked in the larger drama of their lives. This feeling of being invisible was reinforced by my mother's own preferences. It always seemed to me that she had a clear preference for a boy and a girl, a neat and tidy family unit that left no room for a third, an extra. This perceived preference left me feeling fundamentally unwanted, a surplus child who was unworthy of the same love and attention lavished upon my siblings. The cumulative effects of these experiences, the physical beatings from my sister, and the emotional neglect from my mother, have left scars that run deep into the very core of my being. They have not only destroyed my relationships with my family, but have also profoundly impacted my ability to connect with my own children, creating a painful and tragic legacy of inherited trauma. The weight of my past looms over me constantly, casting a dark and suffocating shadow on my present and my future. It is a heavy cloak of sorrow and fear that pushes me towards a pervasive sense of doom, a feeling that happiness is something meant for other people, not for me. After the incident in the bathroom, and after finally being forced to listen to my sister's twisted version of events, a narrative that painted me as the aggressor, the unstable one, I began to realize with a painful clarity that I needed to take a definitive stand. I had to protect myself from those who sought to harm me, particularly those within my own family who would exploit my vulnerabilities for their own selfish gain, twisting my pain into a weapon against me. This realization was a turning point, a moment where the victim inside me began to fight for survival. The fog of denial and hope for a different family reality started to dissipate, replaced by the cold, hard truth of my situation. I could no longer afford to be passive, to wait for love and protection from people who were incapable of giving it. I understood that my safety, both physical and emotional, was my own responsibility. The fight for my life was not just about surviving physical attacks. It was about reclaiming my own narrative, my own worth, from the people who had tried for so long to erase it. This newfound resolve was terrifying, but it was also the first glimmer of light in a very dark tunnel. Being the unwanted child is a pain that lingers, not from one event, but from years of emotional neglect. I tried to fit in, to be the child my mother wanted, but the roles of beloved son and daughter were already taken. Even surrounded by family, I felt alone, my sister's abuse only confirming my sense of worthlessness. These wounds shaped my adult life, especially as a parent where I constantly fear repeating the past. Healing began only when I let go of the hope for a family that never existed, choosing my own well-being over their approval. It's a difficult journey, but it's the first step toward finding my own worth. My struggle became more than emotional. It was a fight for my future and my father's legacy. The inheritance meant for me became a battleground, with my siblings seeing me as an obstacle, not family. Their threats and greed forced me to seek legal help, navigating a minefield of danger and betrayal. Every day is a battle both in court and within myself to claim what's rightfully mine and to believe I deserve safety and prosperity. This fight is about more than money. It's about justice, self-worth, and refusing to be erased. For the first time, I'm walking this road on my own terms, determined to build a life free from their shadows. Childhood should be safe, but mine was a war zone with siblings as my tormentors. Small disagreements exploded into violence and cruelty, leaving deep emotional scars. Physical and verbal attacks became routine, teaching me that love and pain were inseparable. This constant hostility shaped my worldview, making trust and healthy relationships difficult. The chaos of my home followed me into adulthood, echoing in every relationship. Growing up in such conflict left me with lifelong wounds that are hard to heal. Jealousy poisoned our childhood, turning sibling affection into rivalry and resentment. My achievements were threats, not celebrated, forcing me to hide my successes and shrink myself. Every day was a battle for attention, love, and even the smallest comforts. My siblings' jealousy made me feel isolated, teaching me that my worth was conditional. The absence of solidarity left a hollow space where love should have been. This rivalry shaped my expectations, making it hard to believe anyone could truly be happy for me. Home was a playground for my siblings' narcissism, and I was their scapegoat. My pain empowered them. Their affection was a trap, quickly replaced by cruelty. I was trained to seek their approval, walking on eggshells, doubting my own reality. Gaslighting and shifting rules eroded my sense of self, leaving me lost and dependent. I became a chameleon, adapting to survive, never knowing who I truly was. Childhood narcissistic abuse left me empty, searching for the self-worth I was never allowed to build. The foundation of my childhood was not built on love, security, and trust. It was built on fear. It was, honestly, this constant, low-grade hum of anxiety that just seemed to seep into every single part of my daily life, a feeling that something bad was always about to happen. I learned to be hyper-vigilant, always scanning my environment for threats, reading the subtle shifts in my siblings' tone of voice or body language, just trying to predict the next storm before it broke. And let me tell you, this state of high alert is absolutely exhausting for a child's developing nervous system. It robs you of the carefree innocence that should be the hallmark of childhood, replacing it with the weary watchfulness of a soldier in a war zone. There was no true rest, nowhere I could let down my guard and feel completely safe. This foundation of fear made it impossible to form healthy attachments, even with my parents. Their failure to protect me from the abuse created a deep sense of betrayal and taught me that adults could not be trusted to keep me safe. I learned that my cries for help would go unanswered, that my pain was invisible to the very people who were supposed to be my protectors. This created a profound sense of isolation and taught me that I was ultimately on my own in the world. This early experience of abandonment and neglect is a deep wound that can make it incredibly difficult to trust others in adulthood, leading to a fear of intimacy and a tendency to push people away before they can get close enough to hurt you. The fear was not just of physical harm, but also of emotional annihilation. The constant criticism, mockery, and dismissal threatened my very sense of existence. I lived in fear of being shamed, of being humiliated, of being cast out and rejected. This emotional terrorism was, in so many ways, more damaging than the physical abuse because it attacked the very core of my being. It taught me that I was fundamentally flawed, unlovable, and worthless. This internalized shame becomes a toxic inner critic that continues the abuse long after you have left the abusive environment, whispering the same cruel messages that you heard as a child, sabotaging your efforts to build a happy and fulfilling life. This foundation of fear ultimately shaped my ability to interact with the world. I became timid and withdrawn, afraid to speak up, to take risks, or to draw attention to myself. The world outside my home felt as threatening as the world inside it, and I navigated it with a sense of caution and distrust. This fear-based operating system is a heavy burden to carry into adulthood. It limits your potential, robs you of joy, and keeps you trapped in a small, constricted version of life. Healing from this kind of childhood requires dismantling this foundation of fear, brick by painful brick, and learning to build a new foundation based on safety, self-compassion, and trust. It is a long and difficult process, but it is the only path to true freedom. Experiencing profound trauma, especially at the hands of one's own family, often breeds a deep and suffocating form of isolation. This creates a profound sense of loneliness that can become all-consuming, wrapping around you like a thick, soundproof blanket that just cuts you off from the rest of the world. This isolation isn't just about being physically alone. It's a deeply emotional and psychological chasm that separates you from others. You grapple with a tangled web of shame, fear, and confusion that almost always goes hand in hand with traumatic experiences. The belief that no one could possibly understand the unique horror of your situation, or worse, that they would judge you for it, makes reaching out feel like an insurmountable task. The world continues on around you, but you feel completely disconnected, trapped in an echo chamber where your own painful thoughts are the only sounds you hear. This narrative must now shift to explore the harrowing and often misunderstood reality of self-harm. It is a desperate and drastic coping strategy employed by those who feel utterly overwhelmed by their circumstances, by those whose internal pain has become so immense that it demands a physical outlet. In many instances, the agony that words fail to capture, whether because you just can't articulate the depth of your suffering or because of the paralyzing fear of judgment and disbelief, manifests in actions that are both alarming and deeply heartbreaking. Self-harm is not an attempt to end one's life, but rather a desperate attempt to feel something other than emotional numbness, or to translate an invisible internal wound into a visible, tangible one that feels more real and manageable. This tragic reality highlights the critical need for improved mental health resources and widespread education, especially for those suffering from family abuse. The scars left by this kind of trauma aren't always immediately visible to the outside world. making it easy for the suffering to go unnoticed and unaddressed. Many young individuals, like I was, find themselves completely ill-equipped with the emotional tools necessary to confront the harsh realities of family violence. They haven't been taught how to process complex emotions, how to self-soothe in healthy ways, or how to ask for help effectively. They are left to navigate a minefield of trauma with no map and no guide. The chaotic and unpredictable environment of an abusive household actively stifles the development of healthy coping mechanisms, leaving these young people feeling hopelessly trapped and utterly powerless. Instead of feeling safe enough to reach out for help or to seek support from trusted adults or peers, they may resort to self-harm or other destructive behaviors as a desperate attempt to regain control over their lives and their bodies. This tragic response not only makes their emotional turmoil worse, but also compounds their difficulties in forming healthy, trusting relationships outside the toxic confines of their family life, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of pain and isolation that is incredibly difficult to break. The act of inflicting physical pain upon oneself is a complex and deeply misunderstood behavior. For me, it became a desperate language when words were no longer sufficient. The emotional agony I was enduring felt so abstract, so immense and shapeless, that it was almost unreal. I needed something concrete, something I could see and touch, to validate the storm that was raging inside me. The sharp physical sensation provided a momentary distraction from the relentless thrum of emotional pain. For a few brief seconds, the sting on my skin was louder than the chorus of shame and worthlessness in my head. It was a way to anchor myself back into my body when my mind was threatening to float away into a terrifying abyss of despair. This behavior was also a twisted form of self-soothing, a deeply unhealthy but potent way to release the unbearable pressure that was building inside me. It was like a valve on a pressure cooker. The tension would build and build until it felt like I was going to explode, and the act of self-harm was the only way I knew to let some of that pressure out. It was a ritual shrouded in secrecy and shame. I would hide the evidence, wearing long sleeves even on the hottest days, terrified of anyone discovering my dark secret. This secrecy only intensified my sense of isolation, creating a separate, hidden life that no one else was privy to, further separating me from any possibility of connection or help. Alarming reports from mental health professionals suggest that approximately 1 in 5 teenagers who are living in abusive households engage in some form of self-injurious behavior. This is a staggering statistic that just underscores the urgent and desperate need for effective intervention and robust support systems for young people in crisis. For these individuals, self-harm is not a choice made lightly. It is a symptom of unbearable pain and a lack of healthier coping skills. It is a silent scream for help, a visible sign of an invisible wound that is festering beneath the surface. When a child is hurting themselves, they are communicating a level of distress that they cannot put into words, and it is a communication that must be listened to with compassion and urgency. This destructive pattern of behavior can severely and permanently impact a person's emotional well-being, making it increasingly difficult for them to connect with others, to trust in new relationships, or to ever truly escape the suffocating cycle of abuse. The consequences of such actions extend far beyond the individual, creating a devastating ripple effect that can influence their social circles, their academic or professional performance, and their overall quality of life. The scars are not just on the skin, they are etched into the psyche, serving as a constant, painful reminder of a time when pain was the only thing that felt real, making the journey toward feeling safe and whole a long and arduous one. Growing up in a home where emotional expression was either punished or ignored meant that I was never given a basic toolkit for managing my feelings. Emotions like sadness, anger, and fear were treated as inconveniences or just signs of weakness. There was no one to teach me how to identify what I was feeling, to validate that feeling as legitimate, or to guide me in how to process it constructively. Honestly, I was an emotional illiterate, left to navigate the turbulent seas of my inner world without a compass or a map. This absence of emotional education is a profound form of neglect, leaving a child vulnerable and defenseless against the inevitable storms of life, let alone the hurricane of ongoing trauma. Without healthy ways to cope, the pain had nowhere to go but inward. It festered and mutated, turning into a toxic sludge of self-loathing, shame, and despair. My siblings' abuse taught me that my feelings didn't matter, that my pain was my own fault. This internalized message made it impossible to seek help. How could I ask someone to help me with something I believed I deserved? How could I explain a pain that I had been taught to see as a fundamental flaw in my own character? This deep-seated belief that I was inherently broken was the most formidable barrier to my own recovery, a prison built by my abusers but maintained by my own shame. When you don't have the words or the tools to deal with emotional pain, the body often becomes the unwilling canvas. The overwhelming feelings of helplessness and rage that I couldn't express verbally would build up inside me until they manifested physically. Sometimes it was through self-harm, but other times it was through chronic stomach aches, debilitating headaches, or a constant crushing fatigue. My body was keeping the score, screaming the pain that my voice could not. This mind-body connection is a powerful testament to how deeply psychological trauma can impact physical health, demonstrating that emotional wounds, when left untended, can make the body sick. This lack of emotional tools not only affected my ability to cope with pain, but also my ability to experience joy. Because I was so disconnected from my own emotional landscape, I struggled to let in positive feelings. Happiness felt foreign and fleeting, something I was suspicious of, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. I had learned to live in a state of emotional numbness as a survival mechanism. But this defense, while it protected me from the depths of despair, also locked me out of the heights of happiness. Healing, therefore, was not just about learning to manage the pain, it was about learning to feel again, to slowly and cautiously open the door to the full spectrum of human emotion. The aftershocks of trauma do not remain contained within the individual. They ripple outward, impacting every relationship and every aspect of one's life. The isolation and self-destructive behaviors born from abuse create a feedback loop of pain. My inability to trust others, a direct result of being betrayed by my own family, kept me at a distance from potential friends and partners who might have offered support and healing. I would preemptively push people away, convinced that they would eventually abandon or hurt me, thus fulfilling my own painful prophecy. This self-sabotage was not a conscious choice, but a deeply ingrained survival instinct, a misguided attempt to protect myself from further harm by never letting anyone get close in the first place. This pattern of pushing people away only reinforced my deep-seated belief that I was unlovable, creating a vicious cycle that was incredibly difficult to escape. Each failed connection felt like further proof of my own inadequacy, deepening my shame and driving me further into isolation. My past trauma was casting a long, dark shadow over my present, coloring my perceptions and dictating my behaviors. I was viewing the world through a trauma-tinted lens, seeing threats where there were none and interpreting neutral actions as hostile ones. This hypervigilance made genuine connection feel impossible, as I was constantly on guard, waiting for the inevitable betrayal that my childhood had taught me to expect from everyone. The impact on my own children was the most painful ripple effect of all. Though I loved them fiercely, I was terrified of passing on my trauma. My own unresolved pain made it difficult to be the consistently present and emotionally available parent I desperately wanted to be. There were days when my own anxiety and depression were so overwhelming that I would retreat into myself, creating an emotional distance that I knew was confusing and painful for them. I was haunted by the fear that my children would feel the same sense of abandonment that I had felt, that my wounds would somehow become their wounds. This fear was a constant source of guilt, and a powerful motivator to finally seek the help I needed to break the cycle. Breaking free from this ripple effect requires a conscious and determined effort to heal the original wound. It means turning inward and confronting the ghosts of the past, as terrifying as that may be. It involves seeking professional help to learn the emotional tools I was never given, to challenge the negative beliefs I held about myself, and to slowly, painstakingly rebuild a sense of safety and trust in the world and in other people. The journey is not easy, and the ripples of the past may never completely disappear, but with time and dedicated work, their power can diminish, allowing for new, healthier patterns of connection and love to finally take root and flourish. The narrative of family trauma deepens significantly as it unfolds to reveal the intricate and often painful manipulative behaviors that can exist among family members, hidden just beneath a veneer of normalcy. The unsettling and gut-wrenching realization that a sibling is deliberately and systematically exploiting the known vulnerabilities of another for their own personal gain is not just an unfortunate circumstance. It feels like a profound and unforgivable breach of the most sacred trust. This violation shakes the very foundation of familial bonds, poisoning the well of shared history and affection. This kind of exploitation can manifest in various insidious forms, whether it is through overt financial manipulation, subtle but powerful emotional blackmail, or the strategic and cruel withholding of love and support when it is needed most. This behavior creates a complex and suffocating web of betrayal and distrust that is particularly pronounced and damaging in families where special needs or vulnerabilities are involved. In such scenarios, the emotional and physical well-being of the most vulnerable family members hangs precariously in the balance, making the betrayal feel even more egregious, calculated, and deeply painful. The manipulator wields their intimate knowledge of their siblings' fears, insecurities, and dependencies, not as a tool for empathy, but as a weapon for control and personal enrichment. This calculated cruelty transforms the family home from a potential sanctuary into a hostile and dangerous environment where one must always be on guard against those who should be their staunchest protectors. The core of this manipulation often lies in the distortion of reality, a tactic that leaves the victim questioning their own perceptions and sanity. The manipulative sibling might rewrite family history, positioning themselves as the perpetual victim or the unsung hero, while casting their target as selfish, unstable, or ungrateful. They become masters of gaslighting, denying their abusive actions and making their sibling feel crazy for even suggesting that something is wrong. This psychological warfare is incredibly effective because it isolates the victim, making them feel as though they are the sole source of the family's problems. It erodes their self-confidence and makes them more susceptible to further control, creating a debilitating cycle of abuse. This profound betrayal is not a single act, but a sustained campaign of psychological abuse that chips away at a person's soul over time. It is the slow, deliberate dismantling of a person's sense of self, their trust in others, and their belief in the inherent goodness of family. The realization that a brother or sister is capable of such cold-hearted deception is a devastating blow, one that can lead to lifelong struggles with trust and intimacy. It forces the victim to mourn not only the loss of a healthy relationship, but also the loss of the idyllic family they believed they had, or at least the one they always hoped for. Financial exploitation in particular can have devastating effects that extend far beyond mere monetary loss. It can corrode a person's emotional well-being and fracture relationships irreparably. When a sibling uses money as a tool for control, it adds a transactional and deeply toxic layer to the relationship. This was the case with my brother, whose desire for our shared assets led him down a dark path of conspiracy and intimidation. The transformation of siblings from potential allies into fierce and ruthless rivals can lead to a poisonous environment where love and support are completely replaced by competition and animosity. This is a tragedy of the highest order. This shift can have long-lasting repercussions, resulting in lifelong emotional scars that may manifest as chronic anxiety, a pervasive mistrust of others, or profound loneliness. It is essential to understand these dynamics for those in similar situations, as recognizing the signs of financial manipulation is the first step towards reclaiming your health. Establishing firm personal boundaries becomes paramount in navigating such treacherous family waters, as does developing protective strategies to safeguard your assets and well-being. The manipulative sibling often frames their demands as a matter of fairness or entitlement, skillfully disguising their greed as a righteous cause. They might argue they deserve more or that the victim is being selfish. This tactic induces guilt and shame, making them feel obligated to give in. In my case, my brother felt entitled to control our shared stock, and my refusal was seen as a personal betrayal that justified extreme measures. This warped logic is a hallmark of financial abusers. Protecting oneself requires legal safeguards and emotional fortitude. It means seeking legal counsel and putting protections like trusts or revised wills in place. Emotionally, it requires detaching your self-worth from their approval and accepting that their love may be conditional. This involves grieving the relationship you wished you had and building a support network outside the family. It is a difficult but necessary journey to move from being a financial target to being a survivor in control of your own future. Substance abuse can further complicate these already fraught family dynamics in profound and multifaceted ways, acting like gasoline thrown onto an already raging fire. The narrative presented illuminates how drug or alcohol addiction does not merely affect the individual who is struggling with the addiction, but it also creates a devastating ripple effect that can lead to the rapid and complete deterioration of familial relationships. The story reflects how drug addiction can fuel increasingly destructive behavior and effectively disguise underlying emotional turmoil, often masking deeper, unaddressed issues such as unresolved childhood trauma, co-occurring mental health disorders, or the chronic, unrelenting stress of a dysfunctional family system. It becomes a destructive coping mechanism that ultimately destroys everything it touches. When the volatile elements of sibling rivalry and jealousy intersect with the chaos of addiction, the potential for manipulation and violence soars to terrifying new heights. The competition for parental attention, for limited financial resources, and for any scrap of emotional support becomes increasingly fierce and desperate. This rivalry can be significantly exacerbated by the erratic, unpredictable, and often frightening behaviors of a parent or guardian who is also under the influence of substances. This creates an environment filled with constant tension, fear, and unpredictability, where children are forced to navigate a world that feels unstable and unsafe, never knowing what mood or danger will greet them from one moment to the next. Addiction provides the manipulative sibling with a powerful new arsenal of weapons. They can use their addiction to garner sympathy, to evade responsibility for their actions, and to emotionally blackmail family members into giving them what they want. The classic line, "My addiction made me do it," becomes a catch-all excuse for theft, lies, and cruelty. Family members, caught in a cycle of codependency, may enable this behavior out of a misguided sense of love or fear of what the addict might do if they are cut off. This creates a toxic dance where the addiction is in control, dictating the family's emotions, finances, and interactions, holding everyone hostage to its insatiable demands. Furthermore, substance abuse can intensify the abuser's existing negative traits, such as narcissism and jealousy. The drugs or alcohol can lower inhibitions, making them more prone to explosive rage, paranoia, and impulsive violent acts. An already jealous sibling might become consumed with paranoid delusions that their sibling is plotting against them, using this as justification for their aggressive behavior. The substance abuse becomes both a cause and a consequence of the family's dysfunction, creating a downward spiral that is incredibly difficult to interrupt without professional intervention. It turns a toxic environment into a life-threatening one where the stakes are raised for everyone involved. Within these chaotic and substance-fueled family environments, it is often the children who bear the heaviest brunt of the destruction, frequently becoming the unintended, silent victims in the turmoil that inevitably ensues. They may witness or directly experience severe neglect, constant emotional abuse, or even terrifying physical violence as a direct result of their family's desperate struggles with addiction. A study from the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence found that families with active substance abuse issues have a startlingly 50% higher occurrence of domestic violence and child neglect, a statistic that highlights the critical and urgent need for comprehensive intervention and robust support systems. This chilling statistic underscores the absolute urgency of addressing these issues not only for the sake of the individuals who are directly affected by the addiction itself, but also for the long-term well-being of the children, who may be left to navigate these turbulent and dangerous waters without any adequate support or protection. The impact on these children can be profound and long-lasting, manifesting in a host of severe emotional and psychological issues, such as complex PTSD, depression, and attachment disorders that can persist well into adulthood. They are victims of a war they did not choose, and their wounds are often the deepest and most invisible of all. The presence of substance abuse dramatically lowers the threshold for violence. A simple disagreement that might have ended in a shouting match can quickly escalate into a physical assault when one or more parties are intoxicated. Judgment is impaired, emotions are amplified, and the ability to de-escalate conflict is non-existent. The substance user may experience blackouts, not even remembering the violence they inflicted, which further complicates the situation with denial and gaslighting. For the victim, this creates a terrifying reality where they are never safe, as the person who is supposed to love them can transform into a dangerous monster without warning. Therefore, it is essential to implement comprehensive intervention strategies that not only address the addiction itself, but also provide specialized therapeutic support for all family members, particularly the children. This means creating safety plans, connecting non-using family members with support groups like Al-Anon, and providing trauma-informed therapy for the children to help them process what they have experienced. Healing for the family as a whole is impossible until the cycle of addiction and violence is broken. It requires a multi-pronged approach that holds the abuser accountable, while providing the compassionate care and resources needed for the victims to begin their own long journey of healing and recovery. Even years after the immediate danger has passed, the pervasive effects of these traumatic experiences can linger, creating a complex web of emotional and psychological challenges that individuals struggle with daily. The long, dark shadows of past trauma can manifest in multiple ways, influencing how one perceives themselves and how they interact with others. It is like living with a ghost that whispers old, painful scripts into your ear, coloring your present with the fears and sorrows of the past. Recognizing how this past trauma affects current relationships and fragile self-esteem is essential for personal growth and genuine healing. These deeply scarring experiences do not define a person's intrinsic worth or their potential for happiness and success. Rather, they are a painful part of a broader life narrative, a chapter that can be acknowledged, processed, and integrated, allowing for new, healthier chapters to be written. The journey to acknowledge the difficult truth that one's family ties may be irretrievably toxic can be a powerful catalyst for empowerment. This acceptance, though painful, allows individuals to reclaim their own narrative, to establish healthier, life-affirming boundaries that honor their own well-being above all else. This is the first, most courageous step toward freedom. This process of reclamation involves a painful but necessary confrontation with the truth of the past, a willingness to look directly at the wounds without flinching or minimizing the harm. This honest self-reflection can lead to profound personal transformation, allowing for the shedding of old, damaging beliefs and behaviors. Breaking free from a lifetime of negativity requires immense courage and an unwavering network of support, whether from close friends who offer a listening ear, a compassionate therapist who provides guidance, or support groups that offer shared experience and understanding. It is a journey that cannot be walked alone. It is vital to surround oneself with individuals who genuinely encourage healing and foster belonging and acceptance, as this chosen family provides the strength needed to overcome ingrained patterns learned in childhood. Healing means actively addressing past trauma and seeking guidance from professionals or trusted individuals who can navigate the complex terrain of emotional recovery. Individuals who bravely confront their trauma report significant improvements in relationships and well-being, depicting the liberating effects of recovery. This journey is not about erasing the past, but about integrating it in a way that no longer controls the present. Healing from the deep wounds of familial abuse is a complex and highly multifaceted journey that unfolds in several distinct stages, each playing a crucial role in recovery. This arduous journey often necessitates external assistance, as navigating the emotional aftermath of such profound trauma can be incredibly challenging to do alone. Therapy emerges as a pivotal component in this healing process. It provides a safe, confidential, and structured environment where individuals can finally confront their trauma without fear of judgment, giving voice to years of silenced pain. Within the therapeutic space, individuals can articulate their experiences in ways that foster understanding and healing. Through various therapeutic modalities such as cognitive behavioral therapy or trauma-informed approaches like EMDR, individuals learn effective coping strategies. These skills help them manage overwhelming emotions, reduce constant anxiety, and build resilience against future stressors. Therapy is not about finding someone to fix you. It's about finding a skilled guide who helps you access your own capacity to heal. In addition to individual therapy, support groups play an invaluable role by creating connections among survivors. These groups offer a unique platform for individuals to come together, share their stories, and find solace in shared understanding that they are not alone. The shame and isolation that trauma breeds can dissipate in a room full of people who can honestly say, "I understand." This validation is a powerful antidote to the gaslighting and denial victims often experience in abusive families. Sharing personal narratives fosters authentic community and instills renewed hope. As they witness the resilience of others who have endured similar challenges, they begin to believe in their own capacity to heal. This shared experience is incredibly validating and helps mitigate feelings of isolation that accompany abuse's aftermath. It's a powerful reminder that after the darkest storms, survival and thriving are possible, and there is strength in numbers. Furthermore, a comprehensive education about emotional health and the insidious dynamics of abusive relationships is absolutely essential in empowering individuals to reclaim their lives. By gaining a clear and informed knowledge about the red flags and subtle signs of unhealthy relationships, and by understanding the deep psychological impacts of abuse, survivors can begin to cultivate healthier and more fulfilling interpersonal connections in their lives moving forward. This knowledge acts as both a shield and a compass, protecting them from repeating old, destructive patterns and guiding them toward relationships built on mutual respect, trust, and genuine care. This education is a crucial step in breaking the painful cycle of abuse that may have persisted in their families for generations. Research consistently and strongly supports the effectiveness of engaging in these various support networks, with numerous studies indicating that active participation can lead to significant and lasting improvements in emotional health for over 70% of participants. These supportive networks, whether they are formal therapy groups or informal gatherings of trusted friends, do not only provide essential emotional support, they also offer practical resources, shared wisdom, and tangible strategies for navigating the many complexities of the recovery journey. They become a living library of survival skills, where each member contributes their own hard-won knowledge for the benefit of all, creating a powerful collective wisdom. By fostering a safe and nurturing environment of deep empathy and shared understanding, support groups can help individuals to painstakingly rebuild their shattered self-esteem and regain a vital sense of agency in their own lives. The process of telling one's story to an accepting audience and having one's experiences validated can be profoundly transformative. It helps to externalize the shame that was so unjustly placed upon them, allowing them to see that the abuse was not their fault. This shift in perspective is a cornerstone of recovery, allowing them to move from a position of a passive victim to an active survivor who is in control of their own destiny. Ultimately, the powerful combination of individual therapy, strong support networks, and ongoing education forms a comprehensive and holistic approach that is essential for healing from the deep wounds of familial abuse. This three-pronged strategy enables survivors to reclaim their personal narratives from their abusers, to rewrite the ending of their story, and to move toward a future that is finally characterized by empowerment, resilience, and healthy, loving relationships. It is a long and often difficult road, but it is a road that leads out of the darkness of the past and into the bright, hopeful light of a new day, a day they create for themselves. This story, in all its pain and complexity, ultimately highlights the intricate nature of familial relationships, which can be both a source of profound nurturing and a wellspring of deep toxicity, often at the same time. This duality can lead to profound and lifelong challenges for those caught in the crossfire. Recognizing the definitive signs of abuse, such as insidious emotional manipulation, financial exploitation, or overt physical harm, is the crucial first step for those affected to begin to see their situation clearly. Seeking help, whether from professionals, trusted friends, or support organizations, is not a sign of weakness, but an act of immense strength, an essential move to break the suffocating cycle and reclaim one's fundamental right to well-being. Abusive siblings, in particular, can deeply impact one's developing identity, systematically eroding self-esteem and poisoning the well of all future relationships. These formative experiences can leave lasting scars, but it is a message of hope that healing is not only possible, but achievable. By directly addressing the trauma, by courageously confronting the painful memories, and by building a network of supportive connections, individuals can reclaim their lives from the shadows of their past. This journey involves letting go of the hope that abusers will change, and instead focusing on one's own power to create a different future, a future defined by peace and self-love. Healing is an active and ongoing process. It involves developing new, empowering coping strategies to replace the old, destructive ones. It means learning to set and enforce firm boundaries, even when it feels uncomfortable. It requires a daily commitment to self-compassion, treating oneself with kindness and understanding that was denied in childhood. This journey ultimately leads to a future free from the chains of familial abuse, where one is no longer defined by their wounds, but by their resilience, their capacity for joy, and their ability to love and be loved healthily. If you or someone you know is facing the reality of familial abuse, please know that you are not alone and that help is available. There are valuable resources such as national hotlines, local counseling services, and online support communities that can provide assistance and support. Many have faced similar challenges and have emerged from the darkness stronger and more compassionate than before. Embrace the possibility of healing and give yourself permission to create a life filled with unconditional love, genuine support, and profound peace that you have always deserved. Your new story is waiting to be written.